Okay, so it's about time. It's just
Okay.
about time we can start. And um, our next presenter is Austin Lantz. He's an assistant language teacher in the Tomiya City public school system, and over the past 14 years has taught in several public and private schools. His presentation will be about TPR using sign language in the classroom. So, Justin, here you go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, as Ali said, I am an assistant language teacher in Tomiya. I've worked in the school system from kindergarten all the way to high school, but I mainly work in elementary schools. And I've been working in the same school system for about 14 years now. So, um, through that time, I've seen three changes in textbooks, and I've seen um, one natural disaster, the 311 disaster, and then also the Corona outbreak. So I've been through a lot, and I've seen a lot of different things. But I'm sure there's a lot of things that everyone else too has seen that I'm interested to hear about. But so for today's speech, I decided I'll start with a little story. So about 2 months ago, my son was born into the world, and every day from the time we had an interaction, we would use gestures, the same gestures every time. So to drink milk or go potty or to get picked up, easy, super simple gestures. And over the last 2 months, he's learned to associate those gestures with what they mean. And so there's rarely a time nowadays where he cries that we don't know what's going on. And so this is an example of using sign language in effective communication, something everyone does, even if they don't think about it as sign language. They think about it as normal gestures. Um, so now imagine this: young students sitting in hard wooden chairs in a stuffy room with a teacher yelling at them to sit down and stop talking, or a little bit older students fidgeting in class, falling asleep, while the teacher drones on and on about something that was said over the TV speakers in their room, or the top students in the school, fifth and sixth grade students, sleeping, doodling, talking, or creating spitballs, while the teacher asked them about the meaning to vocabulary they just learned 2 minutes ago. And this is done 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, 5 days a week. Well, that kind of sounds like hell to me. Kind of, well, that's the reality of the school system now, the COVID system. And this is the everyday of where I used to work and still do work today. But it's not to say that students are socially distanced and sitting like sardines and for an army formation, just looking forward. Throughout the classes, all of our classes, there are sophisticated systems of nonverbal communication going on. Students who know TikTok dances will do a TikTok dance and stop, and another student across the classroom will finish with the corresponding piece of dance choreography. Or other students will copy the movements from popular comedians or dancers to communicate an idea, and other students will do the same thing across the room. And this will either to say something to the other students or just to make their classmates laugh. And this of course thus starts a chain reaction of the teachers yelling at kids to sit down and be quiet and pay attention in class instead of doing whatever they're doing. So as COVID has slowly made its way through the school systems, especially where I work, of course, it's different in every other place. So I can't say this is all Japan, all the world. But where I work, as COVID has slowly come through the schools, um, any pair work, group work, or communicative activities like karata, anything where we touch the same cards, or any place where we're talking face to face, have been banned by the Board of Education. But within this classes still needed to continue. Of course, this education is mandatory. It's something that's necessary for everyone. So we had to go into class. Students had to go into class, whether that was just online or that was in person in class, socially distanced, sitting for 7 hours a day. So the first outbreak and lockdown is where I was first introduced to sign language. And so I walked into a 6th grade class. Normal 6th grade class. There are 40 students crammed in a classroom with very little air conditioner, four fans going on each corner, all the windows open, and all socially distanced looking forward. It was like when the best metaphor I can think of is there were sardines just crammed in. You could barely move. You couldn't walk in between the rows. And so I walk in my first year. So I walk in, I'm expecting them to be just down and in the dumps from what I've seen through all COVID schools. And so the T1, as I'm an assistant, the teacher comes in wearing a clear face mask and starts class as normal. But this class was anything but normal. The students right away started talking to the teacher. They were having a good conversation. The communication was very easy and very confident. And it was a very large contrast between this class and the class just next door, or any other classes in the schools I had gone to. Now, what had separated the students from this class to the other class? One thing that was different between the two classes was a special needs student. She was a hearing impaired student, but she was super eager to communicate with other students and the teacher. And the teachers tried their best as well to communicate as well. That's why we all had the clear face mask, even though we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So as she spoke with the other students in class, she used every tool available to communicate with them. And the other students responded in kind. So they used gestures, they used eye contact, they used their tablets, different modes of communication to communicate. And they used whiteboards, the blackboard, everything they had. And these different ways of communication kept the students, even though socially distanced, kept the students engaged and interested in class. And in almost 2 years at this school, this one class, the student has left. She graduated last year. So last year and this year, all the students have changed, of course, but they've moved up to the next grade, and most of them are together. And in 2 years, that year and the year before, that one class is the only class where no students are sleeping. There's no students who get up and walk around in class. No doodling. Everyone's engaged. So through my 14 years of teaching in Japan, I've always used gestures. I use gestures a lot to speak, as I'm doing now. I use gestures in class with students and just talking with them in the hallways. And but when I experienced the communication with sign language, actual sign languages in class, and I saw the difference between them, I was amazed. So I began to study sign language on my own time. And one thing that really amazed me was how similar the signs that students already knew, students already used, like I'm happy, or I need to go to the bathroom, I'm thirsty. They're actually the same as what would be used in actual sign language conversations. And so learning that most of my students already knew the basic signs, minus one or two. Instead of happy, it's happy, or sad. A lot of students do this, it's this, but it gets the meaning across. Since a lot of the students already knew that, and there was a context that they already knew, I thought it could help to bring those into the classroom. But that begs the question, are gestures really that important? Could it have been something else that led to those students being, that classroom being so good? And of course, the answer could be yes. I mean, it could be the culture of the classroom. It could have been the teacher that was there. They could have all known each other since they were in their mother's womb. It could be any of those things, without actually studying the class and getting the background information of all the kids before and after and interviewing them. There's no way to tell. But I think that the communication, the sign language may have had something to do with it, because of a statistic that was pounded into my head in university. I went to university to become for mass communication first. Mass communication with a emphasis in Asian history. I was coming to Japan to become the next Dave Spector. I wanted to be a newscaster, but when I came to Japan, like many people, I came to Japan and ended up teaching, and I fell in love with teaching. So I went with that. I went that way instead of becoming Dave Spector. Was that a good choice? Who knows? But I'm happy the way I am, where I am now. But anyways, the statistic that was shoved into my brain in university was that nonverbal communication, the way we use our hands, the way we put our body, we're forward in a conversation, wow, over back, wow. The way we use our eyes, especially with the masks now, like, wow, really? Or huh? All of these things that we do, the nonverbal tics, go into making about, depends on the conversation, but anywhere between 75 to 90% of the conversation is understood through nonverbal communication. We give our information more context through the gestures and the facial tics that we use. So with that in mind, I felt confident that introducing a common set of gestures to the classrooms would not only help students communicate, but to understand a little faster. So the next choice was the next choice when deciding to undertake sign language was actually very difficult. So I'm an English teacher. So should I teach them American Sign Language, or should I teach them Japanese Sign Language? This was actually really hard because I know American Sign Language as well. Just a little bit to get by in the conversation. Where I come from, we had a lot of, it's not special needs, but handicapped people who have different needs, and everyone in the school that I went to learned a little bit about sign language. And yes, Alan, for the sign language, it's for non speaking people. Yes, we use Where I'm from, we have a lot of uh, Asperger's. There were a lot of Asperger's syndrome, deaf, blind people. So um, in the community I grew up in, everyone knew at least a little bit of two different languages, a little bit of sign language. So it was, I guess I was kind of bred and born for this, to use sign language in class. But I decided to go with uh, Japanese Sign Language because it would help students to understand the meanings of the words and gestures faster, because they already have them in their social context. They already know, oh, I'm sad, wow, I'm crying, instead of I'm sad, which is in American Sign Language, I'm sad, and other signs that are completely different and have um, uh, cultural takes that it would I it would take time to have to explain to them why it's this way, and actually have to spell out, this is the my name is Austin, do sign language like that, instead of just saying and just showing them, my name is Austin, and having them be able to use the alphabet they already know. So it was a little bit of, either way, we have to teach them sign language, so they have to learn something new. But I thought, and this may be, we'll see how this plays itself out in a couple of years after my first year students graduate. But I think the choice that I went with was Japanese Sign Language, just because it was more culturally relevant. Now, maybe I should have done uh, the American Sign Language, but that has yet to be seen. So I was studying on my own, and I was learning a little bit and really interested, and still am very interested in sign language. And then we had the second and third waves of lockdowns came in, and where I work, they reacted very, very hard. Everything was on lockdown. Um, student learning was reduced to silent study only, drilling in class, watching lectures on iPads. We watched YouTube videos a lot. So YouTube lectures, we watched those a lot. There was no group work, no sharing cards, no talking, no moving, just sitting and listening. And of course, this is super difficult on younger students who have a hard time sitting still as is. So in the face of adversity and boredom, I took my skills in basic sign language and went through all of the textbooks, first grade elementary school, third grade elementary school to sixth grade. Although in my schools, we do teach first and second grade as well. We don't have a textbook though. And I also went through junior high school and first, second, third, and found some of the signs there as well. And I just went through the books and found out how to say the super basic signs to figure out, say, birthday, or I like something, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's water, Thursday's a tree, things like this. And I would use these in the classes, just without saying anything. I would just, in model conversations that we have with the teachers and teachers, I would use, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Or, oh, thank you very much. You're welcome. No problem. I would use simple little gestures like that, and I'm hungry. I'm hot, and hot, have a fan instead of I'm hot, because this is come here, of course. So I'm hot. You don't want the kids coming towards you. Hey, I'm hot. Come here now. So I'm hot, or using different gestures like that. I use them in class, and never mentioned it in class. Just started using them, and The only sign I did use was I printed off a sign for classroom English. So there was, you know, sit down, stand up, and listen. That was it. So sit down, sit down on the chair, stand up, and then listen. Super simple to understand. So I printed out, I did the signs and took a picture of myself doing the signs and put them on the board every day. So when students come in, I could just easily, all right, everyone sit down. And the students got it. And then, all right, stand up, good. And then listen, listen. And those are the only signs I ever printed out and I ever showed students. And students, of course, began to notice my movements right away. As soon as we sang the first jingle in class, as soon as we first sang the first songs, students began to notice and they started to copy me. And even now, after what, year, 2 years, students are still copying me in class, and I still catch it out of the corner of my eye. They're copying me when we're doing the jingles, especially new jingles and new chants in the elementary school. And so after class, I would see students using the gestures in the hallways, talking with their friends, and or talking about the classroom, talking about the class with their friends, or maybe just to make fun of me, because that happens all the time, of course. But after a unit, which is 4 hours long, where we sing the jingles and chants maybe 4 to 8 times the whole time, students eventually got the sign language down perfectly, and we were able to use that in normal conversation. So after using, I think it's been a year and a half. I think, yeah, a year and a half and a little bit more than that, where I've been using sign language throughout different classes. I use sign language in the very basic sign language in all classes. It doesn't matter. The special needs classes, actually, this is very useful. We don't have any hearing impaired students where I work at the moment, but the students who are there, they're Asperger's syndrome, they have severe ADHD. According to the schools, I think they're just kids personally, but they're just kids who are a little bit slower, and using the sign language really has really helped them to pay attention in class and really settle down a little bit and really have something to focus on. So after about a year and a half, most students aren't using sign language in class anymore, which that wasn't the point to begin with. But students can recognize the signs and respond to them when I use them in class. So, communication has become easier in the classroom. There's no need to yell across the classroom anymore. When I can use a simple flick of my fingers to say the same thing as screaming at the kids. So I teach, most of the classes I teach are 40 students, 40 student minimum in the classroom. And that's a zoo. For anyone who knows it, that's a zoo. Especially Ichinense and Inense, first, second grade. Oh man, they're wild. So, but they all know my signs. So we can be having a walk around the class now that we can. The schools have kind of relaxed a little bit, and we're allowed to use all the other games we used to. But now the students are able to walk up and talk with each other and clap each other's hands if they do a shoulder grafter. But they can be walking around, and then it's time to stop, and I say, all right guys, listen, and all the students, the first ones will notice, and then I'll see them say to their friends, listen. And they'll all look and say, good job everyone. All right, sit down please, sit down, go to your chairs and sit down. And perfect. There's no need to, I always hear other in the other classroom, all right, come on, hold on, sit down, sit there, come on. In the classes that I'm in, because the students have learned the different signs, even there's no communication has become smooth. I think the easiest way to say is communication has become smooth in class. Even students who don't talk, this has given them a way to communicate in class. So we have some students who don't talk in class. They're very nervous, and when we ask them a question, they just sit down like this. But even simple questions, how are you? You know, how are you? The students, this has given them the ability to, I always go up to them and I always say, whisper, whisper. And they can whisper, or if they don't even want to do that, we have some students who, for whatever reason, are sitting in the back away from everyone else. They physically distance themselves. So I can look at them, I can say, make eye contact and look at them and say, with no talking at all, and they can just say, and we have communication. And I don't know what that's going to play out with in 6 years when they graduate, move to junior high, and when they go to university and become whatever they become in the future. But I know that it at least helps them to be a little more confident. So to wrap it all up, in the end, should you use Japanese Sign Language in the classroom? Should you use American Sign Language in the classroom? Should you use sign language at all in the classroom? It's hard to say. With viruses like with COVID and Omicron and Delta and whatever else is coming up next, affecting communication in class and limiting teaching to a lot of the Japanese teachers who route learning and just write, listen, and translate, unfortunately. I think we need to find ways to open communication with the students, both digitally and personally, even if we're socially distant. And I think that using sign language in class is one way to do it. And maybe it's not the way for your classes, but I think having some sort of gestures that everyone knows might be useful. I mean, plus think about it. If a 2-month-old can tell a 38-year-old they need to go potty, imagine what a junior high school student can say with gestures to a foreigner on the street. And I think I will end there. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you very much, Austin.
Of
And
course.
if you guys have any questions for Austin, please put them on the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourselves. You can ask anytime.
Okay. Let's see, in the other codes. Let's see. Okay, thank you. In the end, I think it is a connection, and the words that will come eventually. I think that's true. Thank you very much. I do believe that the connection and the words will eventually come to students, and that's one hope that I have for the students who can't talk or won't talk. Eventually, this will lead to more confidence in the classroom. Thank you very much. And from Matt, yeah, using non-standard hand gestures and facial expressions helps with contextual understanding. I agree. Yeah, the kids will copy the gestures and the body language, and yeah, when they don't understand, they can use the hand gestures and the what they've learned to help build sentences. I agree 100% Matt. And how detailed am I with the signs? This is definitely a huge learning curve with the teachers. For me, I'm all in on learning sign language. Personally, for me, I find it incredibly interesting. So for me, I'm learning as much as I can. But what I use in class is the bare bones basic. I don't use any, I don't spell out anything in class. I don't use any really big gestures. I use, so for example, when is your birthday? Birthday is birthday. You're birthing. And when. So when can be used for how old are you, how many, when. It's multi-use gesture. So any gesture that has multi-uses like this, how many apples do you have? How old are you? Combining simple gestures with pointing to students or with a card, it helps the students can understand it. I don't use full sentence um, sign language with the students. It's way too much work for students. Just basics. I'm happy. I'm sad. Um, I want one gesture. I want something. I like something, or I like this one's weird. I like something or other, but no one does I like. So I like is another way. Super basic with the sign language. For classroom actual classroom sign language, like sit down, stand up, walk around, write. Those are all gestures students already know. Write, everyone knows this. Write, listen. They're one word phrases. So if I can find one sign for each thing, if I can find one sign for each thing, I use them if I can. And would I be willing to do a tutorial if it's something anyone's interested in? Of course, yeah. I have literally a book of signs that I use. Since I use everything, I'm all in is for sign language. I have a bunch of signs already used, but I can put together a list of the signs I use every day, and I can do a tutorial, of course. Have to figure out how to do that, but of course that'd be no problem. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, maybe if you could share your email on the chat so
Oh yeah, of
everyone
course.
who's interested can contact you.
Okay.
Yeah, while Austin is doing that, thank you very much, Austin. Can we give
Of
Austin
course.
a round of applause? Yeah. If you guys don't have any questions, no questions anymore. Austin, any few words you want to leave everybody before we end?
I think first thing I would just have to say thank you to the ETJ staff, everyone who put this together. This is a great opportunity, and I had a fun time getting ready for this. So it was a fun opportunity. I haven't done a speech like this in a long time, so it's something I really enjoyed. And just yeah, thank you everyone for being here.